Hi everyone, this is Dikshit. Welcome to my channel. In this particular video, I'm going to discuss about how we can reuse a single Helm chart to be deployed across multiple environments. So let's say I have an application. If I want to deploy that particular application, then in the Kubernetes cluster, I want to create a deployment object and a service object. And let's assume you don't have multiple environments, you have a single environment. In that case, you're going to create a single YAML file. And in that single YAML file, you'll define deployment and a service, and then you'll deploy it. If there is no change across multiple environments, let's assume if you want to deploy this particular application across dev environment, QA environment, production environment, and pre-production environment. So if there is no change in the configuration or definition, so then you can go ahead and you can reuse that particular single file, and then you can deploy it. But let's assume when you want to deploy your application on multiple environments, so there is high chances that the configurations will going to change. So configurations as in, for example, replicas. In the lower environments, you can have less number of replicas and then you can deploy. But when you go for higher environments like QA, pre-prod and production, you'll end up using more replicas because you want to make sure your application is highly available. And also not only that, let's assume this resources part in the deployment definition. This resources you can define less in dev environment, but wherein like if you want to deploy the same application in production, you might need a little more resources. You're going to change these values. So in that case, wherein like single YAML file, you can't use it to deploy it across multiple environments. So what you'll be doing is you'll create one YAML for each environment, and in that one YAML per environment, you're going to define deployment.yml, service.yml, and then you will deploy it. But let's assume two more environments will going to come in to picture. In that case, again, you need to create two more manifest files, and then you need to make sure that all the YAML files, at least the definition should match. Only the configurations will going to change. And this is kind of a very bad practice to maintain multiple Kubernetes manifest file if there is no change in the definition. So that's where we can use a Helm chart. So what we can do is in Helm chart, all the manifest files, we can shift it to the templates directory of the Helm chart, and whichever the value which is changing, so then we can create values.yml and we can shift those values, whichever is changing per the environment, to the values.yml. So by which we can handle this Kubernetes manifest files a little better when we are deploying it to the multiple environments by using Helm charts. And if you don't know what is Helm chart, and if you want to know other advantages of Helm chart, because this is not only the advantage wherein like Helm chart provides, it has lot many other advantages. If you want to know that, you can refer my playlist on Helm chart, wherein I've discussed about from the basics till the advanced level. I'm going to provide that playlist link in the video's description. Now let's see how we can manage our Kubernetes manifest files by using Helm chart a little better. And if you don't go for Helm charts, so what you'll be ending up doing is wherein like per environment. So in my case, I've created a one YAML file. So in each YAML file, so service and deployment is there. And also in production, one extra object, which is HPA. And only the changes in the deployment and service, the number of replicas you can see in the production, I have 4. So let me open the dev YAML. So I'll open it on the right side, and let me click here and open the dev manifest file. You can see the only changes replicas and also the resources. In the production, I wanted a little higher resources. So that's the reason you can see 1 core and 2 GB of memory I've used. In the dev, there might not be a lot of load and a lot of testing. It might not be done in dev. So that's the reason I want to use the lower limits. And also that's the reason I've given a very less value. So now this is a wrong way, because let's assume 2 more environments will come into picture. In that case, again, you need to create 2 more YAML files, and you need to change only these configurations. So rather than this, wherein like how we can manage these things in a better manner in the Helm chart. So that is what we're going to see. Now let's create a Helm chart. So let me execute one command. So Helm create, and then whatever the directory name I want to create it with, like the folder name that I want to give, wherein like I can give that. So now what will happen is it's going to create the directory with the name, whatever I've given here. I've given UI, and with that particular name, it has created a directory. Under that, it will going to create the standard files and directories, which Helm chart will have usually. Charts directory you can see, and the templates directory. And we will do a little cleanup because I don't need ingress service I need, service account is not needed, wherein like whichever is not needed, I'm going to remove that. And also we have charts.yml, which has the meta information about your chart, and values.yml, which will have all the values which will gonna change. I mean, depending on the environment, in my case. So we're gonna see that we will gonna clean up all the things first. First thing is I don't need this test directory, because I won't do any, I won't use any hooks in this case. So I'm gonna remove this. And also, and in the helpers.tmpl also, wherein like I'll remove whatever the things which are there, I'll gonna tell you, and we will keep this particular file. The other thing that I'll gonna delete is notes.txt, and I don't need ingress as well as service account. I'm gonna remove these 3 files. And apart from this, I have a deployment, HPA, and service. So I'll also remove whatever is there. So I just wanted folder structure. So that's the reason I use this particular command and has been created. And deployment also, I'll remove it. And let's save it. And also now let's take deployment file from our Kubernetes manifest file. We will templatize this particular one. First, let me take into deployment YAML, and then also service.yml. So I'm going to take service definition. So let me put it into the service.yml. And also HPA, let me go into the prod, and let's take this HPA definition and let me put it under HPA. Okay, so now we did whatever the manifest files which we want to create for our application has been created under templates directory. The next thing that we want to do is values.yml also. I'll clear it of all the things. I'll gonna create my own values.yml, and then I'll render my manifest, and then we can see that renderization also. I'll gonna show you in a while. So first thing is, let me open deployment file here, and also in the other window wherein I'll gonna open my values.yml. So let me open values.yml here. And first thing is, you need to remember wherein like whichever the value which is getting changed, so depending on the environment, or like depending on the application. In my case, depending on the environment, the values will gonna change, right? So those values I should place it under values.yml. So that we need to remember. First thing is replicas. So because that is changing across the environment, so that's the reason wherein like I will change. I'll put this value in the values.yml. So for that, what I need to do is, so first let me define a variable, or you can say it as a dictionary in the YAML format. So under this, wherein I'm going to define replicas as my field, replicas, and then I'm going to define 1. And if you want to refer this value from the values.yml to your Helm chart, so the way you do it is dot values, and under that dot values, wherein like app is there, under app you have replicas. So now whenever I do execute Helm install command, Helm template command, so it will gonna first refer this values.yml, and whatever it will gonna search under the values.file, this dictionary is there. Under that replicas, whatever the value is there, right, it will gonna try to replace it here. And then the next things that it will gonna change, you can see that this environment will also change, because in the dev environment, the value of environment will be dev, and for QA it will be QA, and production it will be prod. So this value will gonna change. Let me take this also, and let me put it under app. So this I will make it as dev. And now, so the next things, and also we will see, let's not parameterize, let's not refer this value from here, because one main thing is, see this labels section wherein like it is repeated at multiple places. You can see at the labels it has been repeated, and also at the metadata, which is whenever I want to refer the pod in the definition, deployment definition, this is also wherein like which has been referred, and also in the service YAML also in the selector section, and also wherein like label section that has been repeated. So that we will create something called as a named templates, and then we will refer it. But before that, so let us create other values wherein like whichever is getting changed, right, we will try to create it in the values.yml and then refer it, and then let's create a named temp. And the next value, I can see the image will also be changed, because across the environment, in the production and all, you will take stable images and you might deploy it. And in the dev environment and QA environment, some unstable code wherein like as and when little code is added, you want to test it. So in that case, you're going to change the image and you will deploy it. So that's the reason this image will going to change. So that's why what I'll try to do is, so I'll create one more variable or field, and I'll going to create the container. So this issue is because wherein like as in when I type container, so it has created, you can see the container definition under deployment file or a pod file. That is because I've installed few of the extensions. So that's the reason my IntelliSense wherein like it has printed that onto my file. So now let's I've defined as container. So under this, I will gonna define image. I will say this image I'm gonna copy. And also if you want to refer this particular one here, the way I do it is I need to define dot values and then dot. So I should give uppercase V. You need to remember this. And then after that, wherein like I need to type in app dot, under that you can see container dot image is what I need to give it. So when I type in, so wherein like you can see that IntelliSense has recognized that. And so now whenever I render it, this value, whatever I have referred in, this value will be replaced here. And the next thing is compute resources. This is also changing across different requirements. So this also I want to put it under values.yml. So let's do that. So let me save this file first, values.yml, and let me remove it from here. And also before that, let me create one more field, which I'll call it as compute resources, compute RC resources. And then under this, let me put these values. And let me put it here. And also these are the YML files. You need to make sure that indentation is proper. So let me correct this indentation. I've corrected the indentation. And now, so if you want to refer this value, but like this block actually, now I don't want to refer key value here. So until that, like until this point, we have referred a key value pair. You can see replicas, and this value will gonna be rendered here. But now this block I want to render under resources tag. So for that, what I need to do is, so first, before let me, one thing I will do is I will count the spaces that I want to prefix when I print that particular block. So I guess it is around like 10. So let's check it out. First, let's render it and we will check it out. First thing is, let me remove it from here. And if you want to print a YML block anywhere in Kubernetes manifest files in the Helm charts, I have a function which is called as toYML. So let's use that particular one. So I'm going to use this and toYAML. toYAML. So that is a function that I need to use. And here I need to refer that particular compute resource field. Okay, so let me do the way you do it is, so you need to do dot values, and then under that dot app, compute resources. So this is what you need to call it. And also I need to indent it properly, because wherein like whenever I call toYML and this particular block, it will gonna print whatever is there under that particular field. So in my case, this limits and requests will be printed, but it won't be indented properly, prefixed. It should be prefixed with some spaces, right? So that won't happen properly. So that's the reason wherein like I need to use a function again, which is called as n-indent. And this is a pipe symbol. The output of this particular function will be sent to the next function in the Helm charter. It is same as if you know a pipe symbol in shell scripting, it is same as that. So now, so let me give it as 10. And now, so my whatever the values that it is changing across the environment, wherein like I've templatized. Wherein like the other thing which is remaining is this labels, wherein like for this we will create something called as name templates I have mentioned, right? So let us create that. So it is very similar to function. So when something is repeating, wherein like you can create a function and whenever you require, you will call it, right? So likewise, some block is repeating. So whenever that is happening, you can call that, you can define that in underscore helper.tmpl, and you can call whenever you need it. So let's see how do we do that. So to define some function, our name templates in the Helm chart. So first thing is you need to do define. So we have a function called as define. So, and then you need to give the name of the function. So in my case, as my Helm chart directory name is UI, right? So let me give UI dot. So I'll give labels as the name. And then, so I'm gonna copy from deployment YML. So what is that block? I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna put it under this particular function. And also let me remove this spaces. And also I should end this particular named template. So the way I do it is, so you can type in end. So when you do this, so whatever the function that you have defining, like by using define, so that will gonna end it here. So this is the last line of this particular named template is what I'm trying to say. And now the next thing is what I need to do is how can I refer this particular one there? And also here I don't want to hard code any value. So I want to refer it from values.yml. So the way I do it is type in dot values and then dot app and dot I need to specify field that as environment. So in my case, which is environment, env. Okay, so now, so I have defined it here. So now let's call it into the deployment.yml. So the way we will call that is we should give, so let me calculate how many spaces it should be prefixed with. I guess it should be prefixed with 4 spaces. So that's the reason. not prefixed, it should be suffixed with. So let me do one thing. So wherein like to call any named templates in the templates directory. So then we need to use a function called as include. So once we use that include, so then only we can call that particular function. So let me do that. And we should mention this minus, because if you don't do this, so it will gonna print whatever that function we will gonna call, right? It will gonna have one empty line, and then after that it will gonna print. So I don't want that. So that's the reason. So let me create like this. First, I need to call include. Okay, and so you can see that whenever I type in double quotes, it is showing like what all the name templates which are there under helper.mpl. So this is because I've used the extension, I've installed the extension. That is the reason it is auto suggesting. And now once this is done, so I need to send what are all the objects which should this UI.labels function will gonna use, because in this UI.labels, if you could say I've used some object, wherein like this this particular values.app.env is there in the values object. So that's where this dot is very important. You should definitely send it. If you forget this, then your Helm chat will not work. And after this, I need to use n indent also. If I don't use, wherein like in that case, it won't be able to print it. It will gonna print it, but with the suffix spaces, it won't be able to happen. So yaml, because in Kubernetes manifest file, indentation plays a very important role. So I'll use n indent and also 4, because 4 spaces I want to suffix it with. So that's the reason I've used 4. So likewise, we will gonna change wherever these labels are being used. So I'm gonna update it here also. Here, I guess I need 8. So let me correct this. So I'll put it as 8. And likewise, wherein in the service.yml also, I need to update this. Here also 4 is enough. So that is fine. If I don't give indentation in this, right, Helm chat will going to manage that. And one more thing, very important thing is HPA is not required for dev environment. I need to ignore that. So for that, in the values.yml, I'm going to introduce one more dictionary. I'm going to say that the dictionary name as HPA, and I will say under that one field I'll create enabled, and I will say false. And this value I should, depending on this false true, wherein like enabled, if it is false, I don't want to create HPA. If it is true, I want to create it. So in that case, wherein like, let me go to HPA. So let me open it in this side, and also values.yml this side. So if condition I need to use, and then so I can ignore this. First if, and then I need to provide the condition. In my case, I'll do dot values dot HPA dot enabled. So if this particular value is not true, so then I don't want to create anything. And also this if condition, we need to end it with this end keyword. The way we will do it is this way, wherein like when I render it, so wherein like this HPA shouldn't be created for this dev environment. And also let me rename this values.yml to values-dev, because now I want to create multiple values.yml for different environments. So that's the reason wherein like I'll rename it as values-dev. Okay, now let's render the chart. So for that, so wherein like I can use Helm template command. So when I use Helm template command, it won't deploy it onto the Kubernetes cluster, wherein like it will gonna render your Helm charts. So that means it will gonna replace whatever the values that you have referred it from the values.yml onto the templates directory. So then it will gonna show on the screen. So now let me execute Helm template, and then so let's provide, now my values.yml is not values.yml, it is values -dev YML. So I need to definitely explicitly call that particular values.yml. And then, so let's give the location of the Helm chart. And also I should provide the release name. So let me provide the release name as dev deployment. So I'm not using the release name anywhere, but it is in the Helm 3 especially, we should provide the release name. So now let's generate it. And it is getting printed on screen. I don't want it. Let me store it in some of the file. So let me put it into dev.yml file. So let's see now whether it has rendered properly or not. You can see the service. Only the thing that we have templatized here is this particular part. So which is fine in my case. And also you can see that these are the things wherein like I've called it from name to templates. The indentation is fine. And the replica also you can see that I'm calling it from values.yml. This is also looking fine. And the labels, this is also fine. container images. The only problem here is I have some indentation issues in the resources section. So let me do that change wherein like I guess I want to do the changes in the deployment YAML. I want to add 2 more spaces. So that's the reason wherein I want to give an indent 1. So let me again do Helm template. So now, so let me see whether it has created properly. You can see now it has been indented properly. I'm not going to deploy this. So we will see how it will be indented, and then so the same files will be deployed on Kubernetes cluster. So this video, this demo is basically to show how to manage your Kubernetes manifest files. So wherein like if it is creating this manifest file, so that means these are the things that it will gonna deploy it. So now, so for dev, it is done. So now let's do it for QA. So I'm gonna copy this particular values.yml, and then I'll rename it with values-QA, and then let me do the changes here in the values. I need to do QA here, and also let me do replica count, change it to 2, and also image, let it be that only. And also this one, I'm gonna make it little higher, 1 CPU, and also let's make this as 2 GB, 2 GI. And also wherein like under the request also, let me do 1 and also 2 GB. And also HPA, I don't want to create it. So that's why I've made enabled false. The other things, it remains the same. Now what we will do is, so now let's create the Helm chart by using values-QA.yml. So now also I'll store the output in QA.yml. So now QA.yml has been created. Let's check it. You can see the labels are fine. Environment is set to QA. In the deployment and the service, you can see the replicas, and also the resources part is also fine. So now let's create one values.yml for prod. So let me rename this to prod, values-prod.yml, prod. And under this, I'll gonna, let me correct it properly, the file name, which is extra y. So let's remove that. And under this, the replicas were in 6. I'll define it as 6. And also the environment will be production, prod. And then resources, I'm gonna do it a little more, 4. And also I will say 16 GI. And likewise here also I'm gonna change 4 and 16. And then in production, I want to enable it. So I can give true. And also in the HPA also, there are many things that we can parameterize. You can see maximum replicas, min replicas, target CPU utilization. So these values might change. So that's the reason wherein like we can easily templatize onto the values.yml. So let me open the values.yml of the prod on the right side. So let me open it here. I've made it as true. So let me define a few more fields under the HPA dictionary. So I'm gonna say max replicas, and I will say it as 10. And let me do min replicas. So I'll define this as 4. And also wherein I will say target utilization, CPU. So I'll define this value, CPU utilization. And I will gonna make it this as 50. So whatever is there, I'm trying to use that. And now let's refer it from values.yml. Let's not do it from this particular one. So I just want to do it from my values.yml. So that's the reason. So in that case, dot values. And then, so I can do HPA. Under HPA, I have max replicas. So this is a value, it should come here. And also likewise, let me copy this, the same thing. And let me put it here. And I will do it here, the min replicas. And also CPU utilization also. Let me again copy this and put it here. And it should be CPU utilization under HPA. And this value, again, this we can call it as a named template. So let me copy it from deployment YML. Let me put it under HPA. I'm going to remove this rather than just hard coding it. So I can make it as now in n indent 4. So that is fine. So now let's templatize that, wherein like we will render it and we will see whether everything is looks fine or not. Prod.yml. So when I do this, a prod YML will be created. You can see that it is still QA. So let me check why it is QA. Okay, so we are supplying the wrong values.yml. So we should supply the different values.yml. So per environment, I have different values.yml. So let me prod. Okay, when I do that, you can see that. So now the labels has been properly changed, and also replicas. You can see HPA has been created because we have set enable true. So that's the reason HPA has been created. And also you can see max and min replicas are, it is getting it from the values.yml. Let's change this one. Let's change it to 90% and let's see whether it will gonna render it properly or not. You can see that now as soon as I change and templatize, when I execute template commands, you can see rendered output as 19. Okay, so so this is how, wherein like whenever there is a configuration change, depending on the environment. So this is the way wherein like you can have different values.yml for each environment, and then kind of like you can call that particular onto your templates.yml. Now this is fine. So wherein like let's assume I have a config file. My application has a config map. So which basically I have some configurations which will change according to environments. Let's assume, let me create one file here. So let's say I have one YAML file especially. So this is the configuration, that is the configuration that I want to copy onto the my application whenever kind of my pod will be created. So let me create some random YAML file. So now here itself. So let me create the name of the file as config YAML. Okay. So let's assume this is a file, and which has basically, let's assume timeout is there. Timeout. And so in the dev, it is 10 seconds. And in QA, so let's assume it should be 5 seconds. Okay. And also wherein like in the prod, it should be even lesser. So that is the ask. And also wherein like we have other parameters, like let's say log file. Let's assume I'm gonna store log files under /app var and /log dot txt. So let's assume this is where logs will be printed. And also we have database details also in the config file. So database under this IP is there. Okay, and also let's say IP is 10.20.30.20. Okay, and again like name, database name, that also which has, and also let's assume for your development environment. So UI dev is the DB name that we need to use, and for QA we need to use UI QA, and wherein like for production the UI production it will be, and also this IP also will gonna change, and this timeout will also gonna change. So in this case wherein like I can't place this data under config map directly, and I can't use it. So let's say for example, if I want to copy any configuration file onto the Kubernetes pod. So in that case, wherein like I'll gonna create the config map, and then I'll gonna refer it in my deployment YAML as a volume mount. I will be able to copy the config file from the local onto the pod. But here the problem is, per environment, for each environment, these values will gonna change. For dev, it is 10 seconds. So wherein like in the higher environment, production, wherein like it will be 2 seconds only. So then how do we tackle this particular? Because values, that is fine, wherein we had different values.yml, and then we could able to manage it. But these configurations will gonna change. So how do we kind of like manage this particular one? So these things also we can manage it through values.yml only. Let's do one thing. So let me go to my any one of the configuration or like values.yml. So let us open that config files or like values file on the right side. So here, so let me open this dev first. So let me create one more dictionary here. Let's say I will say config. Okay, under that config. So what I will say is name of the config file. Okay, I will say config.yml. I will say data, and then I will give this whatever the config YAML, this data is there, right? I'm gonna provide it under this data. And also I need to render it properly as how it is in the config file. I will render it properly. So now, so we need to create one more manifest file under the templates directory, because I want this config file to be copied onto the deployment. So that's the reason wherein like I should use the config map object in that case. So I'm just giving the file name as config YAML. So that's fine. And also let me create the config map here. So for that, wherein like I can. So this is a config map. I've referred it from one of my other manifest file. So let's change the things wherein like first metadata. So let's make UI app or React UI. React UI. So I'll also name it as config map. I will say config, and it should be hyphen, not is equals to, are not allowed in the name of the objects. And also labels, I don't want to use this. I want to use the name template in that case. So what should I do is I will go to deployment YAML, and let's take this particular one and put it under config YAML. So I'm going to do this, and it should be indented 4. So that is totally fine. And also now data. So this is where I want to get the file name. So when I want to get the file name here, so I've referred in the dev, if you could see, I've defined the file name also here. So let me refer it from that values.yml dot values dot. Again, I need to define config app. So app is not required. So like I need to define config dot under that config, I have data. So before that data, so this is a file name, right? So that's where I'm going to use the name. And so this is where I want to print the data. But here it is there in the values.yml only, wherein like I don't want to refer it from any other external file. So I want to refer it from values.yml only. In that case, what I can do is to YML. I can refer it like dot values and dot under that config I have and data. Dot data. When I do this, so wherein like it will gonna print, it will gonna take whatever is under the data, it will gonna print it here. And also I need to indent it properly. So that's where I can use n indent, and it should be indented four spaces should be suffixed. Sorry, it's not suffixed, it should be prefixed. So that's where I'm just giving 4. So now let's see, let's render it first and then let's see. So first we will gonna do dev only. So you can see that values.yml, whatever I'm using it here, it is dev. And here also I've defined this config and everything in the dev values.yml only. Let's see what will be the output of the rendered command. You can see that config map, and there is one new line has been added, but that's fine. You can see other things when like it has been indented properly, and whatever is there in the values.yml, I could able to refer here. So if I want to remove this empty line, so in the config YML, I can add a minus here, so that like when like it will gonna, because whenever it prints, right? So empty space is created because of these curly braces. So that's the reason when I give minus, empty line will be removed. You can see now that has been removed. So now this is fine, wherein like I've did it for dev environment. So now let's do the same thing for production and also wherein like QA. So let me go for production and add it here also. So here config YAML, let it be the same as this is a production. So timeout, I want to keep it very minimal, 2 seconds. And the log file will be the same, but DB IP, it might change. So in production IP, definitely it will gonna change 120, let's say 21.31.10. And then like this value will also, let's assume it will be prod. Okay, now let's render it first. So I'm going to use prod YAML, and the output will go to prod YAML. Now this should have 4 objects. One is config map. You can see that production and whatever the IP that we have given, that itself it is giving. And also timeout is also 2 seconds. So now we are able to kind of manage this config file also per environment. And you can see service has been created, and also likewise deployment, as well as you can see HPA has been also created. So let's implement this for QA also. Let's copy the values.yml. So here also, so let's do that particular one. So let me make it as 5 seconds. And so the IP, let it be same. And also I'll keep it as QA. So this is just for renderation. How if we have any YAML file wherein like per environment, it will gonna change. So in that case, how do we render or how do we manage config map? I just wanted to show that. So that's the reason wherein like I'm introducing this dictionary, extra dictionary, and I'm calling in the Kubernetes manifest files. You can do now, or you can see now, I'm just putting QA into prod YAML. So let's see in the prod only. So what would have been happen? You can see that HPA is not created, but config map with the QA values has been created. Now we come to know that like how do we refer if the YAML config, if there is a config file which is in a YAML format, we can easily call. Let's assume like YAML file. So which is not a YAML file, but wherein like there is an XML file or a JSON file. Let's assume there is an XML file. So that I want to refer it in my pod, wherein like as a config map, I want to copy it onto the pod. So here I'm not referring it. I'm not using mount or something. So as I mentioned earlier, so when like we are learning how to templatize it, not to the importance here is to templatize it, not to deploy it onto the Kubernetes cluster. So when like now one file was the config map, wherein this was the YAML format. So that's where I could able to define it in values.yml, and then I could able to bring it onto my config map. But right now, let's assume like there is a scenario wherein like the configuration file is not YAML file. It is a XML file. So now also that XML file also will going to change it according to the environment. So in that case, how do we handle it? Let's assume these are the this is the config XML that I want to copy it onto my pod upon the creation. So if I want to do that, so definitely I need to use the config map. So this is the XML file, not the YAML file. So in this case, how do we handle this particular one in the Helm chart? So that also we will see. So for this, wherein like we need to go for other strategy. So for this, what I'll be doing is there might be a lot of ways, but what I will be doing is first let's create a config directory. I'm gonna create the config directory. So under this config directory, what I'll try to do is I'm gonna create 3 directories. One is for QA, dev, and production. So now you can see that I've created a directories like dev, prod, and QA, and also I've copied the config XML. And why we are going with this strategy is, as I've already mentioned, wherein like this XML also has a change. So each and every environment you can see in the dev, wherein like I have deny only, and also deny is set to 0. So in the production, wherein like I have deny and allow. So this is a configuration. You don't need to worry about what these configurations are. But so here I just want to show you wherein like per environment, per each environment, wherein like the configuration, this config.xml is also changed. So depending on the environment, so wherein we need to handle this config map also. So and this is also wherein like this is XML file, not the YAML file. That also we should keep in mind. So now I've defined 3 directories under the config. So which is dev, prod. Under each directory, I have different config XML. So now let me go to templates and let me create one more config YAML. So let me copy this only. So copy and also put it under templates only. And also I'll rename this particular one with the config YAML -XML. I will say. Okay, and also I'll remove the space. Yeah. So -XML I will say. And also the name will be React UI. I will say XML. Okay, and here the main thing is this labels will stay same, and the values.config name will definitely gonna change, because let me close this all the things wherein like let me open here the dev values.yml. So I will gonna do one more thing. So wherein like I will say config XML, and under that I will say name of the file. So the name of the file will be, I will say app.xml. That app.xml should is the file name, so that it should print here. So in that case, what I should do is config file XML, I should provide it here. And then the name I want to provide it here. So the name is fine. So that is fine. So now main thing is, now what I need to do here is depending on this values.yml. So depending on this values.yml, whatever I supply when I run the command. So depending on that, so if I provide values dev YML, in that case, what it should do is it should go to dev directory and it should read this config XML. So if you want to do that, what I want to do is I want to change the logic here. First thing is I will identify the location. First, I will do that. And then I will take the content or data which is there in that particular config YML. First thing is, let me create one variable. So if you want to create a variable in the Helm chart, so this is a format. So dollar, let me first identify the path. I will define a variable named path. And what I'll do here is in the Helm chart, so there is a directory which is config. Under that, so wherein like I will expect some parameter to be printf. This is a function I'm trying to define. Wherein like let me define it first. So printf is the function, and also for this printf, wherein like I am supplying one of string here. Okay, wherein like you can see that config slash %v and slash I am defining config environment. So in my case, it's not a config YAML, it should be config XML. Config XML, because this is a file name, right? So when like I'll tell you what is this V will be replaced with. So then after that, so there is a environment variable, which is in my case wherein like this particular one, right? So dev, and also for QA it is QA, and for production it is prod. So what I will I made sure is whatever the environment name is there, right? Depending on that only I've created a folder. See for dev, so this environment name and this config, under the config directory there is a directory called as dev, so that name is same. And also likewise if I open QA production, if you see prod, so for prod also I've created one. So if you see QA, so for QA also I've created one. So that's where I will gonna supply that particular value, dot values, and dot wherein like I need to refer this particular value, which is env. Okay, when I do that, what happens is whenever my Helm executes, it comes to this line, right? It will gonna execute this printf config and percentage v. When I use this, right, whatever the value that I'm supplying as a second parameter, so it will gonna take the actual value of this particular whatever the thing that I've referred here. So it will gonna take the actual value, which is in my case when I supply values -dev.yml, it will be the value will be dev. So that will be replaced with percentage. So now, so once this is done, now I know the file name, I know the path where my file is. Now the next thing is I need to print it. So if I want to print it, there is a object called as dot files. So whatever the things which are not part of like templates directory, which will be there under dot files object. And let me type in dot, and also you can see there is a function under this particular object which is called as get the location of the file. In my case it will be $path, and also wherein like it should be indented, and indent 4 is what I'll gonna give, because whatever this particular object which will gonna print, right, so it should be indented 4 times. So that is what I'm gonna try to do it now. Okay, so likewise whatever the changes that I made here, wherein I should also do it in the QA as well as in the production. And very important things are, you need to make sure that whatever the environment that you are supplying it here, this value and the folder name here, whatever you have created, it should match, because that is the logic here. So I am referring this particular value. So depending on whatever the value that I'm going to give, so this path variable will be set, and then that only will be printed. So now let's execute it one by one. First, I'm going to go with dev. So you can see that there are some unclosed. Yeah. So one issue is wherein I have not closed the printf function. So let me do that again and let me execute it. You can see that without any issues, my Helm chart has been rendered properly. And so when I go up, so it is not able to print it. So why? Let me check it out, why it is the issue. Let me go to the config map. One issue is wherein like dot values, it should be dot app and the env, because under the app only I have a env, so that's the reason. So it was failing, so I've corrected it. So now let's render it. So when I go to dev yaml, so now you should be able to see that xml. Okay, you can see that. So whatever we have given to dev, so in my case when I go to dev directory config yaml, you can see that. So let me open that rendered file left side, so which is dev yaml. You can see that without any issues. And if you want to remove the spaces, we know that wherein like you need to give hyphen in after that curly braces, so then it will be removed. So likewise we will render the QA and the production also. Let's see. Prod first we will do it. So let me go to prod YML, and you can see that now in this deny and allow. So let me open the prod here. You can see that deny and allow one also the value. So it will gonna work fine for QA also. Actually, this is what I wanted to show in this video, wherein like how do we manage the configurations and also config files. If it is a YML file, if it is a non-YML file, how we can easily manage it with Helm charts. So this is what I wanted to show. If you like the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.